Chapter 91 Finally Getting Friends. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the way home, Ely kept thinking about what her father just said. Although she considered them someone close, she still doesn't think of them as friends. Because they always call her eyes bad and always bicker with her, disagreeing with everything she says. But, suddenly, she started remembering something. Whenever she gives out a correct answer in the class, everyone else talks bad about her except those two. And, she couldn't help but answer every question that the teacher asks, making teachers very fond of her. The student that stands out but in a good way always becomes the teacher's favorite. But, these two never talked badly about it when she showed her intelligence. She turned her head at Wraith and asked, "Are you really my friend?" Wraith didn't look at her. His face was still burning red, but eventually, he slid his eyes and saw her puppy eyes staring at him. He couldn't understand how someone could look that cute with puppy eyes. He was supposed to be cute. He was from angel race. But, in his eyes, she was even cuter. Finally, he hardened his heart and asked, "Do you think I would help you if you weren't?" At this moment, Ely's eyes widened. She jumped toward him and wrapped her hands around him. "Thank you, Wraith. Thank you for being my friend." When she hugged him, his face suddenly exploded. Why you let go?" At this moment, Brian suddenly made a turn, and Ely returned to her seat. "Oh, sorry, I forgot the path." 0. He apologized and continued driving, but his tone was extremely cold. Ely didn't notice, but Wraith did. He felt chills running down his spine. Brian drove them home without speaking a single word after that, nor did Wraith. On other hand, Ely had already fallen asleep. Brian picked her up and walked toward the mansion. Wraith hurriedly followed him as they saw Charlotte waiting at the door. "What happened? Why did the headmistress call you? Is she all right?" As soon as she saw them, she rushed toward them, asking a lot of questions. Brian passed her Ely and said, "You can ask him. I have something to prepare for tomorrow." Saying so, he rushed to his lab while Charlotte looked at Wraith. It took a while for Wraith to gather courage and explain everything. Charlotte was shocked to hear the entire story. And, she was even more shocked when she learned that his strength already surpassed hers. She didn't blame Wraith, instead she praised him. Although what he did was quite reckless, he did it just for Ely. Ding, dong, suddenly, a bell rang inside the mansion and a panel appeared in front of Charlotte. It showed two people standing outside the gate. One of them was Adam. And, another resembled someone she knew. Gabriel. The first superhero in the world. Charlotte recognized him immediately. "Lily, open the gate," Charlotte said while walking toward the door of the mansion. She opened the door. Gabriel noticed her opening, reaching closer. "Hello, miss. My name is Gabriel. This is my son Adam." He was worried about Wraith and insisted to visit. "Is Brian home?" Gabriel introduced himself and his son. Charlotte nodded her head and said, "Wraith is inside. Ely is sleeping right now. I should wake her up. She would feel great to see her friend." "Oh. No, there is no need to wake her up. I only came to check on him." Adam shook his head and looked at Wraith. "Please come in. Brian is currently busy, but I will ask him if he can come out." Charlotte immediately asked Lily to inform Brian while they entered the room. When Gabriel walked in, he saw Lena and remained stunned for a moment. He has never seen such a beautiful woman, but more importantly, her aura seemed truly powerful. He even had an urge to fight her, but he controlled himself and stretched out his hand. "Gabriel." "Lena." Lena responded with a handshake and went to the kitchen. Seeing her leave for the kitchen, Charlotte sat on the couch while Gabriel did the same. Adam and Wraith went to Wraith's room. As soon as they reached inside, Adam punched his shoulder and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you were living with her?" If I hadn't asked my dad, I would have never known. Wraith rolled his eyes and a big smirk appeared on his lips. Are you jealous? Humph. Who would be jealous of you? Even if you stay with her, it wouldn't make your grade fly. Adam closed his arms and snorted. Hee hee. You don't understand, do you? I am living the smartest man in this world. Do you think I won't learn anything? Wraith proudly broadened his chest and spoke. Smartest man. Adam looked at him with confusion. Hee hee. You don't even know this. Ely's father is the man who created that game called New Gods. He is super intelligent. Wraith proudly stated as if Brian was his own dad. You are lying. Adam looked at Wraith and replied. Wraith shook his head and said, I am not, or else, why do you think Ely is so smart? Do you that this whole mansion is a giant spaceship? Now, you are just bragging. Adam didn't believe him. No, I am telling you the truth. He said that this mansion has one of the strongest weapons on Earth. Hee hee. I am living in such a cool house while you are not. Wraith continued. Humph. At this moment, Adam just snorted and started sulking. He wasn't happy with Wraith's bragging. Seeing him silent, Wraith opened his mouth, but, you can always come here to play. Really? Adam widened his eyes and asked. Wraith nodded his head and replied, but, you also need to admit that you are her friend. Her father already told her that you see her as a rival and friend. I had to admit it. Wait, you already admitted it. How could you do that? I still haven't awakened my powers yet. How am I going to compete with her? Adam clenched his and shouted at Wraith. Shoo. They will hear you. Wraith asked him to be silent and spoke, don't worry, once you awaken or start playing New Gods, you will grow stronger as well. Of course, you will never be strong as me. When Adam heard his words, he silently lowered his head. He also understood how strong Wraith is after talking with his father. He was sad that Wraith is already so strong while he is still an ordinary human. He raised his head and asked, you are not human, right? He suspected him to be a vampire just like Ely. Wraith nodded his head and answered, I am a human. I am Angel. Angel. Wait, you are a girl. Adam opened his mouth wide as he asked. Bam. Wraith controlled his strength and slapped Adam's head. Which part of me looks like a girl? Hearing his question, Adam innocently raised his hand at his face. Wraith's face turned red seeing his answer. He was almost on the verge of getting angry. Calm down. I am just joking. So, are you from outer space? Adam asked. Wraith slowly calmed down and nodded his head, I am the Prince of 3 galaxies. At this moment, his tone was filled with pride. Adam looked at him with disbelief and asked, really? Then, why did you come here? Because some people were kidnapping me. Wraith's tone distorted as he almost cried when he remembered the times when he was kidnapped. Adam didn't speak but suddenly the door opened. ENV Creek. Ely walked in as she saw Adam and Wraith. When she saw Adam, her eyes widened. She rushed toward him and hugged him. Daddy was right. You really are my friend. Adam suddenly froze when he got hugged by her. His head turned stiff when he turned around and saw Wraith looking at him with a jealous expression. Suddenly, a smug appeared on his lips as he looked at Wraith. Ely let him go and looked at him with puppy eyes as she asked. You are my friend, right? It wasn't just Wraith's weakness. When Adam saw those eyes, even though he had been calling them annoying, they were extremely beautiful. He didn't want to admit it. But at this moment, his head just nodded like a robot. Pwah! Adam, you are reacting like a robot. Ha ha ha. Seeing his reaction, Wraith loudly laughed. Why don't you, your eyes are even more annoying now. Adam clenched his fist and backed away as he responded. Hearing his words, all of the smiles on Ely's face disappeared. She felt an intense thirst for smashing someone's head once again. You are right. Her eyes are even more disgusting now. Wraith didn't notice her expression and continued to tease her. But, suddenly, he felt chills behind his back. At this moment, Ely was looking at them with killing intent. She walked toward his bed and held a pillow. Whoosh! Puff! How dare you tease my eyes? After half an hour, the whole room got messy with feathers from pillows. Chapter 92 The Great Prophet and Destiny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. While children were playing inside the room, the grown-ups were outside. Brian also arrived since it was Gabriel that came to his house, not just some random person. They talked about some minor things until Gabriel suddenly asked, Mr. Brian, have you perhaps heard about Chaos Online? Brian's eyes narrowed as he asked, I have, but how did you hear about it? Recently, there was a conference between 3 races. It wasn't a normal conference since the person who called us was Lucy Bathory. When Brian and Charlotte heard her name, their eyes narrowed. Originally, Gabriel wanted to say, your wife, but when he found out that Charlotte is engaged to him, he decided to use her name. We were very much surprised because she rarely ever comes to the conference. During the conference, not just her, one more vampire from her family came. Leakin called her the Great Prophet and she said that you are the one chosen to represent Earth in Chaos Online. The Great Prophet. Suddenly, Lena stood up when she heard that name. She looked at him and asked, are you sure she was called the Great Prophet? Gabriel was surprised by her outburst but he collected his thoughts and nodded. Even Leakin showed the same expression as you, and the Great Prophet also called Lucy, Princess. I did manage to link these things but I don't know how it matters much. 0. Of course, it matters. Lena's expression changed drastically. She looked at Brian and said, it turned out not just me, but many other powerful characters are already trying to manipulate you to be part of your destiny. Hearing her words, Brian narrowed his eyes. Although he believed in destiny, for him, it had a scientific reason and that's all he understood. But, for powerhouses, destiny had a bigger meaning that he had been unable to understand. He collected his thoughts and asked, so, can you tell me more about this prophet? Who is she? Lena slowly calmed down and sat on the couch. The Great Prophet is a terrifying existence that has lived from the beginning of the vampire race. She was born at the same age as the progenitor of vampires. She was given the title of noblesse since her existence was only equal to the Lord of Vampires. Unlike Lord or other vampires though, she had managed to live until now and she is known for her immortality. Do you have any idea for how long the vampire has been living in our universe? Brian nodded his head and said, approximately 10 billion years since the beginning of the universe. Their first planet was a big large planet which had the properties of blood that mutated their genes. Lena opened her mouth wide as she didn't expect him to know that. Brian rolled his eyes and said, I have studied this entire cosmos. I might not know things between powerhouses but I know a lot about this universe itself. Oh. I am not even surprised, Charlotte commented and folded her arms. She looked at Gabriel and asked, is there anything else that she told about Brian? Both Lena and Brian turned their heads at Gabriel after Charlotte asked this question. Gabriel shook his head and said, she only came to inform you that you are going to represent the Earth in Chaos Online. What is Chaos Online anyway? It's a game just new gods but works on a universal level. Brian answered. Gabriel's eyes widened as he asked, does that mean you can get stronger in that game? Brian nodded his head and said, that's just the gist of it. There are different floors, each with its own world. You will be given several quests and finally a chance to cross the floor. Once you cross the floor, you will earn the points. Then, you can use the points to access the gene mutation of a certain planet or species of that planet. Once gene mutation hits 100%, their bloodline will be awakened once. Then, you have to hit 100% gene mutation once again to awaken the bloodline 2 times. Do you know how many times Wraith's father has awakened his bloodline? Gabriel shook his head. How could he know about such a thing? 5 times. Lucy has only awakened 2 times and she is already the strongest person on Earth. If she hadn't been banished from her planet and revoked her identity, she would have still received the blessing of that planet and could have awakened up to 5 time as well. Since both vampire and werewolves leaders have awakened their bloodline 5 times. Once humans of our Earth can awaken the bloodline, they will be able to train and improve their strength. But, none of these matters if you can't even cross the floor and earn points. Gabriel hesitated for a moment and asked, is it really hard to cross floors? Of course, it is hard. At this moment, it wasn't Brian but rather Lena who replied. There are more than trillions of planets that inhabitants different races. Although there are not a lot of different races, there are still millions of them and each race has multiple planets under them. Some even have galaxies. But, only one person can be chosen from one planet. There will still be billions of those who get chosen but even so, only a few races have reached the pinnacle of strength. Do you know why? Because not everyone can complete the floor and earn points. Strength, strategy, willpower, and most importantly luck is required inside Chaos Online. Believe me, if your luck is low, no matter how good you might be, you won't even cross the first floor. This is why he is chosen as the representative from the Earth by the Great Prophet. When she pointed at Brian, Gabriel asked, is his luck really strong? Oh, Lena didn't speak. She sighed, there are many things that I can't tell you nor do I know a lot to tell you in the first place. It is just that your destiny is too strong and the stronger one's destiny is, the more luck they usually have. And since even the Great Prophet chose you, then I think you really have a lot of luck. Brian shook his head and said, I am not sure if my luck is great or not but I am sure to enter the Chaos Online. That's why I am trying to get stronger in the first place. Once I reach Omega rank, I will be able to participate in the Chaos Online. But, it's going to take a long time. Lena sighed, not that long. Brian smirked as it turned a bit evil when he thought more about it. After that, they continued talking for a long time until Gabriel and Adam finally left. Brian suggested Gabriel let his driver drop Adam at his house whenever Adam wants. After all, his friends are here. After they left, Lena sat in front of him and asked, how are you planning to get stronger now that your account is deleted? Brian shook his head and said, it's not something I can tell you right now but believe me, it's definitely something that nobody in this universe has done before, at least, I believe nobody has tried doing this. Anyway, Charlotte, I have something to talk to you about. Saying so, he took her hand and went to his room. Lena stomped her foot in frustration but didn't do anything. She went to the kitchen and started making dinners. From the internet, she learned a technique to get your partner's heart is by ruling his stomach. She was quite good at cooking even in her home but now, she strives for becoming an even greater chief. While she was cooking, Brian took Charlotte to his room and sat on the bed. Do you think she had sex with me just so that she could mix with my destiny? Charlotte hesitated to answer but eventually, she shook her head and said, I am not sure if she really did that just because she wanted to bear your child. Just think about it, if she really just wanted a child, why would she care about you? Care? What are you talking about? When did you see her caring about me? Brian asked, but when he did, Charlotte didn't speak. She even turned around and tried to leave the room but Brian hurriedly caught her. Tell me, how did you know this? What are you trying to hide from me? Brian asked. But, Charlotte didn't reply. Brian didn't give up either. He took a deep breath and said, tell me the truth. I promise I won't get mad at you. After a while, she suddenly punched Brian in his chest and pressed her head on him, sobbing. She loves you. She really does love you. And, I am scared of that. I am scared that I will slowly fade away in the silence if I tell you this. Sob. Sob. I'm afraid of losing you, Brian. I am afraid of getting replaced by her because she truly loves you. Chapter 93 What If? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brian put his hands around her and held her tightly. He hadn't seen her cry like this. He could feel nothing but fear in her eyes. At first, he didn't understand why she was so against Lena. But, now he understood more. Although Lucy was her opponent, Lucy still loved him, at least according to her reactions. But, Lena didn't even love him. She was afraid that her position in his heart will be stolen by a person who doesn't even love him. As for Lucy, she only didn't care because she started feeling Ely as her daughter. Suddenly, Brian asked, "So, something did happen after I lost my consciousness 5 years ago, right?" Charlotte didn't reply but nodded her head while sobbing. At this moment, Brian clenched his fist and mumbled. "I am done with running away. No more. I am not going to hide anymore. No matter what happened, I must face it." Brian slowly pushed Charlotte and walked out of his room. Charlotte was startled, but when she realized his words, she became worried and immediately followed him. Brian went to his lab. He went to a desk and opened a drawer. He took out a strange gun from it. Seeing this gun, her eyes widened. "No, Brian, what are you trying to do?" She hurriedly rushed to him and held his hand. But, he stopped her and said, "Don't worry, it won't put my life at risk." Then, he pulled a small pinky dot-sized glass jar filled with a strange liquid and loaded it inside the gun. He looked at Charlotte and said, 0. 2 years ago, I got a lot frustrated about the loss of memories during those 5 days. I was pretty sure that my memories were incomplete because I couldn't remember a single thing after my parents' explosion. But, I didn't chase those memories because I was worried that all the hatred that I managed to suppress will burst out once again. For 3 years, my hatred was slowly getting suppressed inside my heart, but now, I have no intention of holding back anymore. 2 years ago, I created a serum that modifies certain parts of my neurons to the same properties just 5 years ago during that day. Memories are nothing but patterns of electric pulses. If you get the electric pulses correct, then you can recreate those memories. Taking this serum will allow me to retreat those memories by remodifying my neurons. Someone did a little bit of modification to change those electric pulses so that I won't remember it. It must be her, right?" Hearing my question, Charlotte shook her head and said, "It was an old lady that suddenly appeared behind her. She must be the great prophet. I was running toward you to save you, but I was also afraid that you will hate me, especially when you stabbed her." "I stabbed her." When she said that, Brian looked at her with confusion. Charlotte didn't answer but rather looked at my gun and said, "If what you said is possible, you will find out." Brian nodded his head and pierced the tip of the gun into his veins and pressed the trigger. The liquid inside that jar came out of the tip and entered his veins. It immediately moved on its own and made its way to his brain. Zzz, oh. Suddenly, Brian felt the electric shock in his brain as his legs trembled. He almost fell but eventually managed to stand. Charlotte clenched her fists as she kept watching. Brian's eyelids closed as a barrage of images appeared on his mind. Each image led to a different expression on his face, and eventually, he opened his eyes with full understanding. At this moment, Brian took a step forward and pulled her into his embrace. "I know what she did. I understand what Sid did for me, but nobody can replace you in my heart. I understood why you accepted her, but not Lena. She took a knife from me without even taking a step back, but for 8 years, you were the one who supported me. Charlotte, let's meet our daughter after 2 days." Charlotte didn't understand, but she just stayed in his embrace for a long time. After 10 minutes, she finally let him go and asked, "What do you mean by meeting our daughter after 2 days?" Brian smiled and said, "Our daughter came from the future. How can we let her go without even meeting her once?" After 2 days, her location will be found and we can finally find her. Charlotte's eyes widened. You mean Ely traveled back in time? Why didn't you tell me till now? I was planning on telling you soon. Brian bit his lip and looked away. But, why did she come here? Charlotte asked with confusion. Brian smiled and said, it seemed like something bad happened to me in the future. Anyway, that future is no longer our future. I will explain this later. For now, I need to focus on building a proper power-suppressing bracelet for Wraith. Charlotte punched him on his chest and said, don't keep too many secrets from me. Although I am not smart as you, I still want to be better. Brian smiled and asked, then, how about you try getting a PhD in quantum mechanics and dark matter? Charlotte rolled her eyes and looked away. I am not kidding. I have written many books about those. Well, Lily was the one who wrote it, but the idea was mine. If you read it and understand it, you will get smarter in this field as well. Charlotte stared at him and said, well, it doesn't hurt trying. Brian brightly smiled and rushed toward his desk. Suddenly, he remembered the books were stored in the back. He ran to the back of those tables where there was a big bookshelf. His eyes looked everywhere and eventually, he found the books he was looking for. He rushed back and handed them 2 massive books. Seeing her smiling like that, Charlotte also smiled. Although she isn't going to be smart as him just by reading these books, they will gain a lot of knowledge to help him. But, she gave back 1 book and said, I still need time for training. I have to get stronger, remember. Brian smiled and nodded his head. By the way, I forgot to ask you. Once you enter the Chaos Online, you can still leave, right? Charlotte asked. Yes, we can, but according to the rules, we can only leave once after crossing the floor we will be in. Without crossing the floor, we will be stuck there forever unless we give up. But, once a person gives up, he and his planet lose their chance to enter the Chaos Online for eternity. Brian nodded his head and explained. Charlotte nodded as she understood but suddenly fell into confusion. She bit her lips and thought for a long time. What are you thinking so much for? You can ask me anything. Charlotte looked at him and released a deep breath. Do you think you belong to the people who created Chaos Online? When she asked this question, he was shocked for a moment. He clenched his fist and answered. I don't know. I want to know and I will find out, but for now, I have no idea. All right. Don't think too much and get back to work. Charlotte kissed his lips for a brief moment and finally left the lab. Brian chuckled, but soon, his expression changed. I will find out. I will uncover each and every mystery about me. But first, I should get back to work. When Brian turned around, Lily appeared in front of him and informed him. Sir, I just received the sample from Barry and analyzed the atoms of those bugs. I also reconstructed the bug the moment I did, it self-destructed itself. It felt like someone knew we could reconstruct it and so set it on automatic destruction on the atomic scale. And, even the materials seem to be fourth-dimensional. It is astounding that there are people with fourth-dimensional techs to spare in this universe. Brian clenched his fist and asked, what if the person is the one who created the fourth-dimensional techs? Sir, are you suggesting that the person has the same level of intellect as you? Lily looked at him with disbelief and asked. We can't overlook that. What if there is a person with the same level of intellect as mine and currently targeting me? Brian asked. But, sir, what could such a person possibly get from targeting you? Lily asked. Brian chuckled and answered, isn't it simple, Lily? If someday I decide to abandon that promise, my moral codes, and goodness in my heart, who in this universe could possibly stop me? Oh, the powerhouses could indeed kill me, but only if they find me. I have thousands of methods to hide, but I can't because I have people with me right now. What if the person targeting me wants to get rid of me because in his eyes, only I can be a true obstacle? After all, even you know that I am bound by many things and thus not reaching my full potential. Chapter 94 Ely killed someone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 2 days later, Lily, have you refined the fuel out of the dark matter bomb? Young Ely stood in front of her computer and asked. Miss, there seems to be a problem in this dark matter bomb. I am picking up constant fluctuation from it. Although this fluctuation doesn't seem to be harmful, it is creating a strange phenomenon around this building. Lily replied. What? Then, why didn't you tell me sooner? Young Ely's eyes widened when she heard those words. She immediately started creating the barrier around her house with the energy produced by a dark matter bomb. Oh, miss, if you use that energy, we might not be left with much to return home, Lily spoke. What? Didn't you calculate that the amount of fuel that we can extract from the dark matter bomb was 3 times more than we need? Young Ely screamed as she slammed her fist on the table. Miss, my calculations were off due to the constant release of those fluctuations, Lily answered. Damn, you are just useless. I thought she modified you and made you closer to Daddy's AI. Young Ely clenched her teeth and gashed. She was angry beyond help, but she didn't take out the frustration on the computers. She retreated fearing that she would damage the computers and started thinking. What should I do? If these fluctuations enter his radar, then he will immediately find me. I can't face him, not now. I am scared. What should I do? No, first, I should focus on celestial killing bomb. It is only 15 minutes away before the explosion. Once it explodes, he will definitely do everything to search for the source. But 15 minutes might not be enough to recharge the time travel machine. 0. What should I do? I have already set the timer. Lily, is there any way to change the timer of the celestial killing bomb? Young Ely raised her head and asked. But before Lily could reply, another voice rang from behind. She doesn't have a way to do so, but I do. When young Ely heard this voice, her eyes widened. For her, this voice meant more than anything else. It was so familiar that she could never forget it. My daughter came from the future but didn't even meet her daddy. Isn't this too heartbreaking? Brian spoke as he walked toward her. But, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by Charlotte. Young Ely didn't turn around. She was afraid. She tried to rush away, but Brian instantly caught her shoulder and said. If you run away, Daddy will be very sad. Sob. Sob. At this moment, Brian and Charlotte heard her sobbing. Brian pulled her into his embrace and patted her head. Oh. It's okay, Ely. You have grown up a lot. You can't cry like now. Wah-ah-ah-yeah, but his words only made her cry even more. She cried like she was holding back those tears for years. And she was holding back for years. For her, it has been 8 years since she finally got a chance to meet her father. You didn't have to bear such a burden. How could I be so stupid? Bang! Brian smashed his fist on the ground so hard that the blood came out of his hand, but it didn't hurt as much as seeing his daughter in such a situation. It's not your fault. When people are emotional, they rarely make the correct decision. Ely, you've suffered. Charlotte patted his head and wrapped her arms around Ely. When she felt those arms, Ely slowly turned her head at Charlotte. Her face was covered with fear as she wrapped her arms around Charlotte and cried. Mom. Woo! Charlotte was shocked for a moment. She did expect her to cry like that with Brian, but not with her. At this moment, she felt like some of his predictions were coming true. But still, it made her scream seeing her crying like that. She held Ely tightly in her embrace as she also started crying. Brian slowly left her in Charlotte's embrace and walked up to the computer. Without any hesitation, he immediately started working on defusing the bomb. He still had 12 minutes left, which was plenty for him. If I want to defuse the bomb right now, I need to internally change its structure. Thankfully, I had designed it in a way that its internal structure can be changed in case of emergency. Brian immediately started recalibrating the entire bomb and redesigning the inner part of the bomb, but young Ely suddenly rushed to him and shouted. "Daddy, stop. I promised you to change the world. I must fulfill my promise." "Ely, I am sorry but I can't stop. You have already changed the future the moment you travel back in time. I need to change it and complete the time travel machine to send you back as soon as possible. You don't have any idea what's going on." Brian shook his head and focused on defusing the bomb. What do you mean by that?" young Ely asked with confusion. "We will discuss after a few minutes. Let me finish this first." After that, Charlotte pulled Ely in her embrace and said, "Let your daddy handle this. He knows what he is doing." Young Ely bit her lips and nodded her head while putting her around Charlotte. After seeing so much love from her, Charlotte asked, "Was I a good mother figure to you?" Young Ely trembled for a moment and shook her head. When Charlotte received this answer, her heart sank, but young Ely spoke before she could misunderstand even more. "You were a great mother." Slowly, a bright smile appeared on her lips. The daughter and mother stayed like that. Even though they weren't blood-related, they were very important to each other more than anything else. Suddenly, young Ely spoke, "Daddy, is it really okay? I promised you that I will destroy evolution." "Sly girl, you said that to the version of mine in your world, not me. You truly don't understand time travel, do you? Tell me, who was the one that created this time travel?" Brian asked while working on the computer. Young Ely didn't reply, so Brian continued, "This person has done a lot of mistakes. Some might even be intentional. So, I suspect that this person's plan is to send you back in time so that you would never return. I am not sure of this person's true purpose, but this person seems to have either intentionally or unintentionally forgotten the true consequences of time travel. Whoever did this must be your enemy in dark. No, it's time. There is no way she would do such a thing to me." "Daddy, you are lying, right? She wouldn't try to kill me." Young Ely instantly jumped out of Charlotte's embrace and shouted while running toward Brian. Charlotte hurriedly caught up while Brian replied, "Your father will never lie to you. That's why I said, I don't know if it was done intentionally or unintentionally, but most of the proof makes it more intentional. Lily is full of cracks. There are billions of codes that are removed from her. That's why she has been making mistakes over mistakes. The consequences of time travel are deadly unless you return to your own timeline in a short time. So, tell me, who was this person?" Thud. Young Ely suddenly fell to her knees as she started realizing the potential of her father's words. She trembled and started crying. Charlotte held her daughter tightly and let her cry. I did, it's my sister. She is your second daughter with Mom. Why would she do such a thing? I don't believe it. There has been a mistake. We never fought, always supported each other, and I took care of her for a long time. Why?" At this moment, a big smile appeared on Brian's lips as he slammed the final key on the keyboard and defused the bomb. He slowly crouched down and put his hand on her head. "Well, it seems like my second daughter has received my intelligence and my powers. It seems like she did this not unintentionally, but despite knowing the consequences, she did it for you." Young Ely slowly raised her head at Brian. Her face was covered with tears as she didn't understand. But, who was Brian? The smartest man in this world. How could he not get a clue about this situation? He found many things even before coming here. Although those were just theories in his mind, most of them were proven correct. Now, he believed another theory has been proven. He looked at her with a smile and asked, "Tell me, Ely, who was the person that you had to kill with your hands despite being very close to you?" When he asked that question, young Ely's expression froze. She didn't answer, but rather she understood that he already knew the answer. Yes, the person she killed was none other than her own mother. Lucy Bathory. Chapter 95 Alternative Worlds Cruel Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Charlotte looked at Brian since she didn't know the answer, but her heart was already guessing someone. She had studied the human brain. She understood why Ely was in so much pain. But, this is the answer she didn't hope to be correct. Brian nodded his head without speaking. Even he knows that she had already guessed it. He didn't have to spell it out for her. Charlotte's arms around Ely clenched as she pulled her even more and cried. She couldn't even think of this happening but didn't expect it to happen. What would have happened for her daughter to take the life of her real mother? What happened in the future? Why was it so dark? Is it going to be the same? Will her daughters suffer the same fate? Then, she suddenly looked at Brian as she expected him to say something. Brian didn't say anything but rather hold them in his arms and let them cry. He knew something like this would happen if they meet young Ely, but it still hurts. No matter how prepared he was, no matter how much he knew, it still hurts to see his wife and daughter cry like this. He felt he couldn't even open his mouth. It felt dry. But after a few minutes, he finally spoke. What you did was for us, wasn't it? You did it for us. So, don't blame yourself. Your sister understood your pain and sent you to the past so that you can live with us. 0. Do you really think a person who can create time travel can't create celestial killing bomb? It was just a lie to send you back in past. She knew the consequences of time travel, but she also knew that I could help you avoid those. Your sister knew that once you are stuck here, you will eventually come to me no matter how hard you tried to stay away from us at the beginning, and I can help you solve those problems. Oh, but, she overestimated me. I hope so. His tone was still full of suspicion, but young Ely didn't catch it. She had covered her face as she continued crying. Brian heavily sighed and pulled her into his embrace once again. If you keep crying, we won't be able to talk and you can't stay here for a long time as well. So, just take some deep breaths and calm down. Young Ely nodded her head while wiping away her tears. She tried her best to calm down. Ely, before you tell me anything, I just want to let you know that no matter what you say now, it's not going to make any major changes. The change began the moment you came. You interacted with her. So, you don't have to worry about anything. Oh. Young Ely nodded her head and spoke. I am currently 20.2 and I have been living with my sister alone for 8 years. She is only 10 now. According to you, she inherited your talent and intelligence because mom's bloodline was too weak to suppress it. I only inherited your intelligence but couldn't inherit the ability to talk with technology. After I started living with you, she also came to live with you only after 3 months. At first, it was she and mom had quite a bad relationship, but eventually, they started living peacefully. It took you 3 years to reach level 100. Of course, it could have taken less, but you were too busy with her and mom. Ely. Suddenly, Brian interrupted her as she raised her head. He looked at her and sighed. Call her mommy just like you always do. Do it for my sake. Brian understood to whom Ely was referring as she and her, but it made him feel sad. Because the person she loved the most was her mother. She only started loving her father a lot after getting to know him better. Ely lowered her head with hesitation for a long time and finally continued. Mother never really cared about your relationship with mom, but later, she told me that she was jealous of mom. Unlike mom, you always treat the mother as my mother rather than your wife. Of course, it wasn't the main reason behind what she did. After the birth of your second daughter with mom, her jealousy soared. She felt that now you have another daughter, you will completely ignore her and me. But, she knew you would hate her if she does anything wrong with mom. So, she used vampires. She ordered the vampires to kill all the werewolves. This started a new war between werewolves and vampires. Naturally, Mom had gotten a lot stronger during this time. She got engaged in the battle against vampires. While you tried to bring peace between two races, you didn't succeed. Eventually, it turned into an all-out war between them. I couldn't watch it. I loved my mother, but I also loved Mom. Sob. Sob. They were fighting in front of me, which I couldn't bear to watch. So, foolishly, I made a decision to stop them from fighting. But, I didn't realize when I was trying to stop them, they were using one of their strongest attacks against each other. I got caught in the middle and both of them couldn't stop it. At that time, you jumped in the middle and covered me with your body. You didn't let me get an injury, but you suffered all of that blow. At that moment, you died at my hands and asked me to stop this war. It was the last thing you told me. I cried and cried. The war stopped, but only temporarily. But, your death made Mom mad. After all, she wasn't the one who started the war. You had to pay for something that you didn't do. Your death hit her very hard. So, she continued the war. Unfortunately, she was still weaker than Mother. In the end, Mother killed her. I tried to stop Mother again and again, but she didn't listen. After she killed her, she also tried to kill my sister. So, I had to kill her before she could kill my sister. After 3 of you died, I started living with my sister, but the war continued. The war started taking the lives of millions of humans. Even though humans were counterattacking, the casualties were huge. One day, I came across the idea of time travel in your lab. I realized that even though I couldn't complete it, my sister could. Within those 3 years, you had already removed the celestial killing bomb from New Gods. Since werewolf and vampire were your wives, you thought it wouldn't be good to keep such weapon. But, I had to stop the war and destruction. So, I took care of my sister as she grew up and helped her learn more. Unlike me, she learned everything within just the age of 5. She even developed quantum tunnel at the age of 8. And, finally, at the age of 10, she succeeded in creating the time travel chair. I came back in time to get the blueprints of celestial killing bomb, but somehow the fuel that was perfect for going back in time wasn't enough. I didn't want to meet because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to go back. I really missed you. Seeing her in tears, both of them held her tightly. Charlotte choked, sob. You suffered too much, Ely. Sob. Sob. Brian didn't say anything. He just embraced Ely. He had tears in his eyes as well. He didn't expect his daughter to be alone, but also to take care of a child. He clenched his fist as he didn't know whether to feel good or bad. Many things have changed. He can no longer play New Gods, which means he won't reach level 100, but it doesn't mean Lucy won't feel jealous. Lucy would still have her pride. But, many things have changed because of it. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. He immediately pushed Ely out of his embrace and fell to his knees. Ely, you must leave soon. I know it is really hard to bear this burden, but your sister will definitely help you. Just make sure that she doesn't do anything stupid. I feel like someone is using the time core technology to find me and manipulate me. Whenever that person is, he has successfully deleted my account from New Gods. This person isn't something I can deal with right now. And, you need to go back in time before Time Core finds you. Remember, your world is no longer our future. It is an alternative reality now. No matter what you do, you can't change other worlds. Brian, Lucy, and Charlotte are no longer alive there, but you are using the time travel device, so Time Core will definitely find you for this. He immediately lifted Ely and rushed toward the small chair on the back. It had a silver metallic finish. It didn't feel any different than most chairs. He put her on the chair and shouted. Ely, remember that world is now an alternative dimension, so don't use time travel to get here. Ask your sister to build a dimensional traveling gun. I drew a design when I was 16 but didn't get a chance to complete it because of lack of time. You two have a lot of time. Although that gun is fifth-dimensional technology, I believe she can easily build it. Once you do build it, come back. Your daddy, mommy, and mom will be waiting here for you. Saying so, he kissed her forehead, and before she could say anything, he pressed a red button on the side chair. Suddenly, a white light flashed around her as she raised her hand to say something, but the white light wrapped her until the chair disappeared completely. Brian Jackson, are you still tampering with time despite our warning? Suddenly, a voice rang behind him. Chapter 96 Time Core. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Guys, calm down. I am not tampering with time. Brian raised his hands and turned around. Behind him, there were 3 people holding a unique gun with a tower top on the front. They were wearing a light green suit with a mark of the clock on their chest. Brian Jackson, don't lie to us. We detected the new branch separating from the main branch of time. You know what kind of consequences it will lead to when you temper the nexus of time. The man standing in the middle spoke as he took out a holographic screen and showed some graphs on it. All right. I admit I tempered with time. But, I did keep myself alive, okay? If I hadn't done anything, I would have died. Is that what you want? Brian snorted as he folded his arms and looked at them. Charlotte looked at him with a confused and stunned expression. Because she knew he wasn't the one who tempered with the time. Is he trying to take the blame on himself? Suddenly, she began to worry about the consequences. She understood why Brian hurriedly sent Ely back to her time. But, the next moment, she was stunned even more. Oh, you did that to save yourself. Ha ha ha. Why didn't you send the message then? We were worried that someone related to you came here by tempering with time. Something serious happened to Time Core, so we suspected it was related to you. The man in the middle suddenly laughed out loud and patted Brian's shoulder as if they were friends. Brian rolled his eyes and said, or why else do you think I would create another branch in time? Anyway, what happened in the Time Core? Oh, the man suddenly paused as a serious expression appeared on his face. Someone hacked the system you built for us. It even alarmed the Supreme Lords of Time Corporation. By the way, do you think you can help us out? The man in the middle leaned closer and whispered, 0. Brian brightly smiled and said, it will cost you. The man in the middle turned around and signaled his men. They took out a pile of metal. When Brian saw this metal, his eyes widened. Is this or of Sate? The only fifth-dimensional metal that is found in our universe. The man brightly smiled and nodded his head, yes. We confiscated this from a group of madmen who were trying to destroy the Nexus. It was quite a heavy battle that even Supreme Lords had to participate. The Supreme Lord told me that you might be able to use it better than us. And, we also need to strengthen our security. Previously, the highest level tech we had was the torch circuit which you used to create that main processor of new gods. That's why we couldn't afford to get the maximum security to block the hacking of level 15 intellect, but now, with this, it should be enough, right? Brian nodded his head like a child. Of course, it would be. With this the device that I wanted to build will be even more awesome. I can't wait to build that. Anyway, I will strengthen the system up to level 15 intellect so it won't get hacked, and also can you ask Supreme Lords to give me permission to track the location of the person who hacked the system? The man looked at him with confusion but eventually nodded his head, all right. I will ask Supreme Lord. It's good that you are keeping your promise. Oh. Of course, even though I have designed it, I won't look at the information without permission. Brian smiled and replied. All right then. We should get going. As the universe is growing stronger, more and more people are messing with time. Our Time Corp is getting busier than ever. By the way, why do you need the information from our system? The man asked. Brian heavily sighed and said, "It feels like someone is targeting me." "No, I am sure someone is targeting me. The person who hacked your system must be the same person." Hearing his words, the man's expression turned solemn as he asked, "Will you be alright? We have already invited you before and you can come to join Time Corps at any time. You will be safe there." Brian smiled and wrapped his hand around Charlotte. "No, I have some bigger responsibilities here. Like being a great father and a good husband." Hearing his words, the man laughed out loud, "Ha ha ha ha. You are right. The only thing you won't get in Time Corps is a family." At this moment, the corners of his eyes had tears. But, he quickly wiped them away and asked, "But, are you sure you can handle the situation?" Brian shook his head and said, "If I truly abandon everything, you know I can even be immortal. But, I can't abandon my new family. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I will try to live." The man sighed and nodded his head, "All right. If you ever need help, give me the signal. Because of you, Time Crops is able to handle 10 times more cases than before. We won't let you die that easily." "Thanks, Jack." Brian hugged him. The man nodded his head and said, "Well, then I shall go and purge the timeline you have created." "Oh, you don't have to. I have already purged the timeline. You can check it on your device." Brian shook his head and answered. Wait, how did you? I almost forgot that you already know the entire structure of timeline purging gun. But, you shouldn't use it. Man, you are going to give us big trouble if you use it again." The man's expression turned ugly when he heard Brian's words. "Don't worry, I have sent the coordinates to your device so you can record it without a problem. And, I won't do it again. I only did it because I created it in the first place. You should go now." Brian responded. The man nodded his head and 3 of them disappeared just like how the chair disappeared. It was the white light wrapping them and turning them into a small ball until it disappeared. "What do you mean by purging them?" "You didn't," Charlotte immediately grabbed his hands and asked. Although she believed that he didn't do it, she was still worried. He flicked her forehead and chuckled, "Why would I purge them? I just lied to keep them safe. After all, this was our daughter's plan." "You mean, our daughter's plan?" Charlotte pointed at her and him as she asked. Brian nodded his head and said, "She must have read through all my research and devised a plan when Ely told her about time travel. She sent Ely back in time because she wanted to disrupt the timeline and create a new branch. Because doing this, she can one day come into our world and live with us for as long as she wants. Although I have a good relationship with Time Corps, there are things that I can't change. I installed a chrono barrier into that chair. Now, once she returns, the coordinates of her world will be blank, which would be the same case when it is purged. This means her world will be safe from Time Corps. This day is really amazing. Not only did I get to meet my daughter from the future but also got this ore. Damn. I can't wait to build it." Charlotte nodded her head, "Yes, and I got the idea for what should I do." At this moment, she clenched her fists and thought, "No matter what, I will do everything to keep Ely happy even if I have to crumble that bitch's pride. I won't let the tragedy happen." Brian looked at her and smiled. The only reason why he brought her was to let her feel closer to Ely. He knew if she doesn't love Ely as if she was her own child, their family will definitely crumble. Having more than one woman is a sin. Someone said that in the past, but he pushed it out of his mind, not caring much about it. But now, he is beginning to understand what really means to have more than one woman as your wife. He is not a cold bastard who won't care about his lover. Once he loves someone, he will truly love her. He loves Charlotte and he wants her to be happy. But, he also loves his daughter. And, his daughter has a mother who isn't Charlotte. And now, he has another girl who will supposedly stay with him forever as his spirit. If he just becomes a little shameless, he can even brag about having 3 wives from 3 different races. At this moment, a thought came to his mind. My daughter is a vampire. If I have a daughter with a werewolf and a spirit, would I need to mention them separately? My daughter is a werewolf. My daughter is a spirit. Nah. That sounds too long. I will just say. My daughters are awesome. And, if I have sons, I will say, my sons are badass. Ha 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 ha. Brian laughed in his mind and left the room with Charlotte. Chapter 97 Alice and Adam. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey James, can you come over to my house? I have something that I need your help with. Brian sat on the couch while drinking coffee as he talked with James on a video call. Alright. But, it will take a while. I am currently busy with something else. James nodded his head and cut off the call, leaving Brian stunned. Did he get a girlfriend or something? Anyway, I should go back to the lab and start working on it. Ding dong. Suddenly, the bell rang. A virtual screen appeared in front of him and he saw a girl standing in front of the gate. What? Suddenly, he screamed out loud with shock and surprise all over his face. On the screen, there was a girl whom he had known for a while. She was standing while holding a suitcase in her hand. Brian, what happened? Charlotte dashed out of her room as she asked. Lena also rushed out of her room. They were surprised by his scream. Then, they noticed a screen panel in front of them. Seeing a picture of a girl on the screen, they looked at him with confusion. Who is she? Zero. Brian closed his mouth and lowered his head. Lily, let her in. He deeply sighed and sat back on his couch, covering his face with his hand. Charlotte and Lena looked at him. After a while, the girl opened the door and walked in. When she saw Brian sitting on the couch, she dropped the suitcase and dashed toward him. She jumped and opened her arms wide. Dad! Shouting out loud, she embraced him while falling over his body. Brian paused as he couldn't even open his mouth to say anything. On other hand, Charlotte and Lena tilted their heads in confusion. What the hell? Who is she? Why is she calling him Dad? Did he? Brian noticed their expression and shouted, I didn't do anything to other women, okay? Anyway Alexa, I told you I am not your dad. You can call me whatever you want but not a dad. You still have a real dad. Humph. He destroyed what he created, but you created something new from what he destroyed. Parents are the creator of their children. So, you are my dad. The girl was called Alexa. She pouted as she sat on his stomach and folded her arms. Oh. Suddenly, a hand pressed Brian's shoulder as a deadly voice rang from behind. So, hubby, would you like to explain it to me? Brian suddenly trembled. He raised his head and saw the dark and gloomy Charlotte. Alexa noticed his reaction and immediately caught Charlotte's hand. You must be my new mom, right? Although I saw your picture on the internet, you look even more beautiful in real life. Nice to meet you. My name is Alice. I was resurrected to life by him, and from that moment onward, I swore to be his daughter. It took me 2 years to properly take control of my body. And, I promise I won't blow up this house. Charlotte blushed when she was praised by Alexa, but she also got a lot more curious. She looked at Brian and asked, so, what's her deal? Let me explain this to you. My name is Alice Tyler. I am 18 years old. I was originally a vampire, but because a certain man wanted to awaken the full potential of my bloodline without even strengthening my body, I ended up reaching the state of death. Although I was healing, my inner organs, almost my whole body was destroyed. I thought I would die, but Dad saved me. He replaced my destroyed body with nanotechnology that allowed me to form a body made out of the machine. I am now more of a cyborg than a vampire. He gave me a new life. That's why I swore to myself that I will be his daughter from that moment on. But I still had a hard time controlling my body and he was weak. So, I stayed away until I could finally control my body. Charlotte didn't know how to respond. Although she could see the smile on Alice's face as she explained, death wasn't something to laugh at. Well, you did tell me that one day you will come and find me, but you have to remember that I am not your dad and your dad is still alive. Brian sighed as he patted Alexa's head and spoke. No. He is not my dad. A father doesn't kill their children. He is a murderer. He is a cruel monster. Alexa screamed at me as tears fell down her cheeks. HAA. Brian heavily sighed and slowly stood up. He looked at Charlotte and said, well, since Alexa will be living with us, you should get familiar with each other. I will go out for fresh air. Charlotte nodded her head as she went to sit on the couch while Lena stared at Brian. She noticed a figure standing outside and sighed. Brian walked out and closed the door. He turned his head and behind him, there was a man whose face was covered in tears. Brian raised his hand and touched that man's shoulder. She is right. I am just a monster. I truly don't deserve her. The man spoke as he walked away with Brian. Adam, you were the one who made me feel that not all vampires are cruel monsters. You made a mistake. Everyone does. Things have changed. Give her some time. She will slowly understand. Brian shook his head and replied. Adam remained silent and shook his head, no. I don't think she will ever change her mind. Not only did I take away her mother, but I almost killed her. If you weren't there, she would be dead. He raised his hand and covered his face as tears fell down his cheeks. I don't mind if she hates me. I just want her to be happy. She has been working hard on controlling her body for 2 years just to live with you. Please, take care of her. Brian looked at the man next to him and sighed. The man wasn't ordinary. He was a king rank. He was almost as strong as the strongest werewolf Lycan. But right now, he was just an ordinary father who lost the love of his daughter. A father who is hated by his daughter. Brian clenched his fist. He never wants to be like him. He took a deep breath and suddenly hugged Adam. Don't worry, I will take care of her. And, someday, I promise I will find a cure for her. Once her mother returns, she will slowly return to you. Adam shook his head and said, no. She is happy with you, Brian. I had never noticed it before, but she was never happy with me. But, with you, I believe she will be very happy. That cure isn't easy to find, and even if you find it, it would be impossible to create it with your level of technology. I have found another way to heal her. I am going to leave Earth as well. So, I want you to promise me one thing. Suddenly, he moved away from Brian's embrace and looked straight into Brian's eyes. I want you to promise me that you will take care of Alexa. I know she is not your biological daughter, but please, please love her as if she is. He slowly got to his knees and put his head on the ground. Please take care of her. I know you can do that. Brian clenched his fist seeing him like this. This is the reason why his hatred toward vampires fell down. The man in front of him was a king, the ruler of hundreds of thousands of vampires. But, he was kneeling in front of a weak human without even a single hesitation. Yes, he almost killed his daughter, but he learned a great lesson from that. He understood that power, prestige, resources, nothing comes even close to the worth that your family holds. He understood this a hard way. Brian crouched down and patted his back. I promise you. I will take care of her and I will treat her just like I treat Ely. Come on, don't do this. You said we are friends. Friends don't kneel to each other. Friends. You are the one who called me a friend. I was a father who was in debt that he could never repay. You were the one who cleared that debt. Today, I am not kneeling to you as a friend. I am kneeling to you as a father. Brian sighed and stood up. All right. Alright, but stand up or else I will show this to your daughter. What? Don't do that. Adam immediately stood up with an embarrassed expression. Oh, Brian smiled and raised his fist. Both of them bumped their fists together as Brian spoke, "Goodbye, friend. Let's meet again soon." Adam smiled and he flew away. At this moment, drops of tears fell on Brian's cheeks. He touched the tears and muttered. The regret that was in my heart for being a friend with a vampire has finally vanished. It feels like I am finally free of all hatred. Chapter 98 Ely's Birthday Part 1 You're listening at novelfull.audio. Brian turned around and walked toward the mansion. When he opened the door, he saw Alexa's arm changing into a large dot-sized cannon. It had a silver metallic cover and had blue light glowing like stripes. See? I can turn my body into anything mechanical as long as its power doesn't surpass my own core. Alexa cheerfully explained while showing off her new advanced body. Only her hand was changed into a cannon. The rest of her body was still the same. The clothes around her arms had disappeared and everything else was still there. Core. Charlotte looked at her with confusion as she asked. Alexa's core is made out of a technology that generates energy from her blood. Her bloodline is still there and it will continue to be there, but it can't help her on anything except providing her energy and improving her cultivation. It can't even heal her like before. Her whole body is 80% mechanical, but the remaining 20% is the reason why that 80% works. In other words, she is a perfect mix of both living and non-living creatures. She isn't technically a cyborg, but I have installed Lily in her program so that she can do anything a cyborg can. Brian explained as he walked toward the couch and sat. Alexa nodded her head and said, "Yes, it was this year's birthday present from Dad. The previous year, he made me this dress that can comfortably keep me covered even if I transform my whole body." Your birthday present? Charlotte looked at her with surprise. Suddenly, the bell in her mind rang. Wait, isn't her birthday tomorrow? Ely's birthday is tomorrow, right? Brian's eyes widened as well. His mind shuffled several pieces of information and finally, a date came to his mind, October 8th. Oh, today is October 7th. His eyes widened as he nodded his head. I almost forgot about her birthday. What should we prepare for her birthday? Charlotte thought for a moment and said, how about this? You take Wraith and Ely somewhere else tomorrow morning and return during the evening. We will prepare a big birthday party for her. Brian nodded his head and asked, do you think she will come? When Charlotte heard his question, she froze for a moment. She didn't answer it. Instead, Lena next to her spoke. I think she will come. First, she has no reason to miss her daughter's birthday. Second, she would want to be near him. I don't know the true reason why she didn't appear, but her birthday seems to be a perfect chance to come into your life. Charlotte clenched her fist, but suddenly, an image appeared in front of her. It was the image of young Ely with her face covered in tears. She took a deep breath and shook her head. It doesn't matter whether she wants to come or not. We are going to invite her. Send her a mail telling her to arrive tomorrow evening. Brian looked at her with confusion. He thought she wouldn't agree to her coming into this house. But, he doesn't know that Charlotte had made an oath to do everything she can in order to keep Ely smiling. Oh. Although their future has changed, not all of them might change just because of Ely's intervention. It's just like if you know that you are going to be a billionaire in the future but never work hard for it, you will never become a billionaire. She knows she must do everything to change the future or else, it would repeat the same tragedy. More importantly, she doesn't want to the part of Brian's murder. Just thinking about it makes her shudder. She looked at his confused look and said, Ely needs her mother, her real mother, at least on her birthday. Let's not get our personal feelings involved. After that, if she decides to stay, I will talk to her. Brian was surprised by her ferocity but still agreed. After they decided that, he finally left for his lab. In the lab, he kept working until he was called for dinner. "Daddy." Ely rushed toward Brian and jumped into his embrace like usual. She pointed at Alexa and asked, "Daddy, she said that she is my sister. But, she is clearly 18 and only 7 years younger than you. How is it even possible?" Brian smiled and patted her head. "Well, she is your sister, indeed. While checking my file, do you read the file which recorded the vampire I cured? Well, she is that vampire. This is a bit complicated. Well, not for you. Just think of this as you recognizing Charlotte as a mom. Although we don't have a blood relationship, she thinks of me as her father." Ely thought for a moment and asked, "Is it because you pulled her back to life from death?" Brian smiled and nodded his head, "Yep. She is fun. You can ask her anything you want to know as well. She will be a great big sister for you." "But I want a little sister. I want to be a role model for my little sister." Ely lowered her head and spoke with a low tone. At this moment, Brian looked at Charlotte and they immediately moved their heads as their face turned red. Brian knew young Ely didn't tell Ely about her younger sister, so it was quite unexpected. Brian looked at Ely and thought, maybe this is the reason why she took care of her sister and gave her a good life. Well, a little sister, huh? At this moment, his thoughts got a bit naughty, but he kept his thoughts under control and shook his head. He can't do it right now. He gave birth to her when Ely was 14, which means there will still be 6 years gap, which seems good enough. Brian sighed and walked up to the dining table. "So Ely, tomorrow you, Wraith, and I will go to a pool. And it is also Sunday, so you will be free tomorrow." "Really? But, just 3 of us." Ely looked at Charlotte hoping that she would also come. From the first day when they met to now, things have changed a lot. Previously, she didn't even want her to be close enough, but now, she wants her to go whoever she goes. "Don't worry, Ely. We can go together some other day." Charlotte smiled as she served food on her plate. "Okay. Uncle, can I go back to my galaxy tomorrow?" Wraith looked at Brian and asked. Brian rolled his eyes. He was still not good with Wraith calling him uncle, but he was slightly stunned as to why Wraith wanted to go back. "I have something that I didn't bring. I will be back by evening." Wraith looked at him with puppy eyes and asked. "You too? Then, won't I be alone in the pool?" Ely almost teared up when she heard him. "Ely, did you already forget about Daddy after getting a friend? Daddy is going to be sad." Brian looked at her and pouted. "Daddy, I know you will come with me, but you can't play in the children's pool, or you can play on children's water slides. Won't I be left alone if he doesn't go there?" Ely folded her arms and pouted. "Then, how about you call Lily? Since tomorrow is a holiday, she might go with you. Oh, you can also call Adam." Charlotte smiled at her as she suggested and sat down. "Adam said he has something to do with his dad tomorrow. But, I can call Lily. She might agree." Ely responded as her expression changed constantly. First, dinner. Brian patted her head and they continued with their dinner. That evening, they talked a lot, but nobody spoke about Ely's birthday. Next day, Wraith went back to his planet through long-distance teleportation and Brian took his car to Tony Carter's house. Lily agreed to go with them, so he had to pick up her first. Inside the mansion, Charlotte, Alexa, and Lena looked at each other and nodded. "It's time to change the house." "Lily, did you order all the items I asked you for?" Charlotte asked. "Yes, madam. All the items will be delivered within 20 minutes. Lily responded, which cheered up Charlotte. After getting proposed by Brian, Lily started calling her madam, which made her extremely happy. "First, let's clean up the hall. We need to set a table in the middle. We will remove the couches to the sides. After we receive everything, we will start decorating this place. Charlotte gave them an order and immediately wore an apron. She covered her mouth with a mask and held a vacuum cleaner in her hands. Lena looked at her and asked, "He is rich, right? Why didn't he hire any servants? There is in fact no need to clean this. Lily cleans the entire mansion every single day. I am just trying to set up the mood. As for servants, we don't need them. I can cook, we have machines to do cleaning and laundry, and Lily can always watch over the house. Why would need servants when we can handle everything with Lily's help?" Chapter 99 Ely's Birthday Part 2. Eyes that makes him fluster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Daddy. Lily and I want to go to that slide. Ely pointed her small finger at the slide that reached almost 20 meters tall and called out to her father. She was wearing a small bathing suit and so was Lily. As for Brian, he was also wearing the bathing suit. Unfortunately, his body hadn't touched the water at all. Almost no children are trying to use that slide. Are you sure, Ely? Brian looked at his daughter and asked. Ely nodded her head. Uncle Brian, not just children, even adults are allowed to use that slide. I think she wants you to use it as well. Lily raised her hand at a board that showed a sign that people of all ages are allowed. All right then. Looking at the airbags on their shoulders, Brian agreed. With those airbags, he doesn't have to worry even if the water is deep. 3 of them climbed the stair that was 50 meters long. Uncle Brian, you should go first. It will be safer for us. Lily looked at the long water slide and turned back at Brian. She was a bit nervous, but she wasn't trying to show it. After all, she was Ely's big sister. How can she act like a little sister in front of her? You are very sensible. Brian patted her head and sat at the edge. With a slight push, his body slides through the pipes. Splash. After he hit the water, he moved to the side as he waited for them. 0. Woo. Woo. Splash. Splash. Both of them entered the slides one after another. Ely was the first one after him. She was truly fearless. On another hand, Lily was trying to be fearless while still trembling. She almost forgot to move her foot when she fell on the water. Brian immediately helped her as she finally conquered her fear and moved her feet, though the water wasn't that deep. One more. Let's go for one more time. Ely excitedly looked at her father and begged while making puppy eyes. Brian sighed and let them go up once again. It seems after Ely tried once more, other kids started noticing. They also asked their parents. Although it was quite long, it wasn't that dangerous. So, eventually, more and more people gathered. Soon, it became crowded. Brian, Lily, and Ely finally left this pool and tried some other pools. After 2 hours, they finally left the pool. But, he still couldn't return home. Lily asked him to drive her home since she had something she wanted to do. Brian didn't return to the mansion but rather went to visit other places with his daughter. In Andromeda Galaxy. Oh. Son, why did you suddenly decide to return? Don't tell me they bullied you. Guards, send the fleet of 1,000 Omega Rankers and destroy that planet. The Emperor sat on his throne and ordered as he looked at his son who had just arrived. Oh, no. No. Father, you are jumping to a conclusion. I came here for something else. Stop your command. Wraith panicked for a moment as he hurriedly explained to his father. He went closer to the throne, almost next to his father. The Emperor stopped the order with a single raise of his hand. The advisor who was standing next to him bitterly smiled and shook his head. Instead, he curiously looked at the prince trying to figure out his reason. So, what made you return, son? How long are you going to stay? The Emperor looked at his son and asked. Father, I only came here for one reason and I will immediately return. Wraith answered, but he didn't tell his purpose immediately. Oh. What could have made you return? I thought you took everything you needed. The emperor looked at his son with curiosity. Wraith, you've returned. A beautiful lady who felt like an incarnation of a goddess ran toward the throne when she saw Wraith. She hugged Wraith from behind and rubbed her nose against his cheek. My son, I missed you so much. This lady was none other than his mother. She was the most beautiful lady in the entire galaxy, and her beauty could even make Lucy and Lena ashamed. It wasn't just her skin. The holy aura around her felt too godly. It seems like the bright golden light always moves behind her. She was wearing a light white dress and had a necklace that seemed to be made out of red crystal. Mother, you are squeezing me. Wraith tried to push his mother, but unfortunately, he was too weak to do so. Let mommy hold you for a while. You have only gone for a few days, but it felt like years to me. Humph. If your father wasn't cowardly, you wouldn't even have to go. The Empress looked at the Emperor and snorted while squeezing her son. Wraith was doted by his parents too much. Mother, I don't have time for this. I have to return before an evening in the earth. Wraith struggled as she finally let him go but still stayed next to him. So, what do you want, son? The Emperor looked at his son and asked. Wraith opened his mouth, but the next moment, his face turned bright red. He blushed so hard that his parents were surprised. The advisor was also surprised, but he had already thought of the situation. He barely held his laughter. He was also curious about the thing that the prince wants. Are you blushing, son? The Empress looked at his face and asked. A big smile appeared on her face as she whispered, Who is she? Is she beautiful? Did you come here to get a gift for her? Mom, it's not that. It's a birthday and I wanted to give her something. Wraith blushed, even more, when his mother teased him. The Emperor looked at his son with surprise as he asked, So, what do you need? Wraith opened his mouth but the word didn't come out for a long time. You will be late if you don't ask for something. The Emperor wanted to laugh at his son's expression but he didn't want to discourage his son. I want eternal red crystal. Wraith shouted out so loud that everyone in the hall heard his voice. For a moment, it was complete silence in the hall. The next moment, everyone's eyes widened. They obviously understood the value of eternal red crystal. Except for the Emperor, none possesses the crystal and he has only given this crystal to one person. And, that is his wife. The necklace that the Empress wears is made out of that crystal. The Empress and the Emperor looked at their son with wide eyes. As a prince, he was taught about relationships way early. Not because he should have relationships, rather he mustn't have a relationship with anyone else but a person he will love forever. Both of them got worried. Once he gives the eternal red crystal to someone, it would mean that person would be the next empress of the 3 galaxies. Son, I have taught you the importance of eternal red crystal, right? Are you sure you want to give it to someone else? You only have been there for less than a week. The Emperor looked at his son and asked. Wraith lowered his head and clenched his fist. At this moment, there were a lot of thoughts in his mind but among them, only one stands out the most. It was an image of something. The red eyes make him feel flustered in his heart every time he looks at them. If it wasn't for his bloodline constantly pushing him to feel disgusted by those eyes, he would have truly blushed just by looking at her. But, no matter how much his bloodline truly tries to disgust him, he can't get enough of those eyes. He gets the feeling to watch them forever. And, when he saw tears in those eyes in the cafeteria, the angel inside him turned into a devil. The anger that he couldn't contain rose so high that it broke the bracelet that was holding his strength. In short, he went full power just by seeing her cry. Of course, he isn't willing to accept it in front of her, but he still wanted to make those eyes his forever. So that, he can look at them for every moment of his life. Son, take this. The Empress slowly took off her necklace and gave it to him. Mom, these are yours. Wraith's eyes widened when he saw her giggling. The Empress nodded her head and said, "These crystals aren't that impressive. They don't give you any kind of strength or talent. But, they are unique because there is not a single more crystal in the world. Every man born from the past has given the same crystal to their Empress. The only thing that changes is its shape. These things won't lose even a single ounce of material while molding. So, they have been passed down from generation to generation. Now, I am giving this to you. If you are really going to give these to someone, you must remember something. This crystal is called Eternal Red Crystal, because it represents the love that will remain eternal even after death. So, choose carefully to whom you should give this." At this moment, Wraith hesitated. He clenched his fist and asked, What if she doesn't agree? Hearing his question, the Empress and the Emperor were surprised. They laughed and the Empress patted her son's head. "Then, you have to do everything in order to win her heart." Chapter 100 Ely's Birthday Part 3 You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was already the evening. Brian finally drove the car toward his home. Ely had fallen asleep. After half an hour of drive, they finally reached their destination. "Ely. Ely. We are home." Brian wakes her up as he walks out of the car. He picks her up. Even though she was trying to wake up, her eyes were still partially closed. Picking her up in his arms, he took her in front of the mansion. Then, he put her down, which made her confused, but he immediately opened the door. "Happy birthday, Charlotte," Lena, Alexa, Adam, Wraith, and Lily shouted at the same time, surprising her. Their surprise almost gave her a jump and a big smile. "Happy birthday, Ely." Brian got to his knees and pulled her in his embrace. "Thank you, Daddy." Ely smiled as she snuggled in his arms. "Happy birthday, Ely." Charlotte also walked closer to her while holding a cake in her hand. "Cake." Ely jumped excitedly, almost holding the knife in her hand. Wait, first come in. We need to put the cake on the table and then you can cut it." Charlotte stopped her excitement and took her inside. But, when Ely entered the room, she saw a person she didn't expect to see. Her eyes widened as she dashed toward that person. "Mommy." Ely jumped into Lucy's embrace and tightly hugged her. "Happy birthday, my daughter." Lucy squeezed out a beautiful smile and patted Ely's head. "Mommy, I thought you couldn't come here." Ely looked at her with surprise and spoke. "How can I miss my daughter's birthday? Come on, let's not make others wait. You still need to cut the cake, right?" Lucy smiled and lifted her daughter to the middle of the couch. Lucy went to the side and stood up while Charlotte brought the cake and put it on the table in front of Ely. After Ely cut the cake, everyone started giving her the birthday presents. Since everyone had their presents wrapped, nobody could find what others gave her. But, Ely was so excited that as soon as she received the gifts from everyone, she started taking out the gifts. The first gift that she opened was from Brian. It was a paper with a few codes written on it. Normally, others didn't understand what it means, but Ely did. Her mouth opened when she saw this code. She looked at Brian with shock and shouted, "Yes. Master Control. Now, she can use Lily for anything she wanted." Basically, Brian gave her full authority over everything he has ever created. Seeing her so happy, Brian smiled and said, "All right, you should open others' gifts as well." One by one, she opened all of the gifts. Charlotte, Adam, and Lily's gifts weren't that interesting. They were extremely precious and good, but not in her eyes. Even so, every time she opened the gift, she showed great joy to make them happy. Oh. Lena gave her a stick. It seemed normal, but it wasn't. Great magic stick. With this stick, she can easily manipulate and create elements fusing her mana with it. Whenever they cultivate using 0-point energy, they produce another form of energy called mana. This is why the game has mana in the first place. Mana is the outcome of evolution granted by zero-point energy. It was a powerful energy that can be used for battle. After taking that gift, she opened Wraith's gift. When she opened it, Lucy, Lena, and Brian looked at the red crystal necklace with wide eyes. Lucy almost made a move but Lena stopped her. Although Lena can't exert her full strength, it was still good enough to stop Lucy. Wraith, do you know what that necklace represents? Brian looked at Wraith and spoke with a sharp tone. Wow! Such a beautiful necklace. Thank you very much, Wraith. Ely didn't even hear Brian and went to embrace Wraith. Wraith, who was just frightened a moment ago, finally felt safe. But, he felt a powerful disturbance in his blood. His bloodline was asking him to go away from her, but his willpower was fighting back. Humph. Adam clenched his fist when he saw Ely hugging Wraith like that. He chose one of the best gifts he could find on the earth, but Wraith chose one of the best gifts one could find in the entire galaxy. There was no comparison at all. At the same time, Charlotte walked closer to Brian and whispered, "Don't act like a child. We can discuss things later. For now, let her enjoy." Brian looked at her and sighed. He also understood Charlotte's concern. It's just that he didn't expect Wraith to give her eternal red crystal. He knows the market value of this crystal. It is almost priceless because there is not another crystal within the nearby 10 galaxies. But, it also represents something else. Since only one family in 10 galaxies has this crystal, it represented the future empress of the 3 galaxies. This is what made Brian so mad. His daughter has just come into his life and this brat was taking her away from him. How could it not make him mad? Lucy was also angry, but Lena was surprised. Knowing the value of this crystal, it was so surprising that the Empress let her son give it to someone else when her son is just a child. Is it because she doted him or does she have another intention? Lena couldn't come to any conclusion no matter how much she thought. After separating from Wraith, she opened Lucy's gift at last. She was very excited about this, and when she opened the gift, she found a book. Blood Domain. 2 words were written on top of the book. When she saw it, her eyes widened. She looked at Lucy with those same eyes. Lucy smiled and nodded her head. It was finally the time to let her daughter inherit the blood domain. The final, most powerful skills created by the vampire progenitor. Ely had seen her mother use this skill twice and each time, no one from her enemy side survives. It was the ultimate skill of vampires. Ely didn't expect her mother to give this skill to her so soon. Lena and Brian also looked at Lucy with surprise. This skill was truly famous and they knew only the top-ranking vampires can learn it. Wow! Is that blood domain? Wraith cried out in surprise when he saw the name of the book. Adam touched him with his elbow and whispered, "What's blood domain? I heard it is one of the strongest skills among vampires. But normally, only the high-ranking vampires can train this skill and every high-ranking vampire is on Night Blood Planet." Wraith whispered, trying to keep his voice as low as possible. Oh, but, all of them still heard him. Lucy narrowed her eyes when she heard her planet's name. She knew this boy was the Prince of 3 galaxies. Even she didn't dare to reckless make a move. Otherwise, even if Lena wanted to stop, it would be too late. Ahem. Since the gift ceremony is finished, how about we eat something? I bet everyone is hungry here. We will get the food ready. Charlotte cleared her throat and distracted everyone as she signaled Lena to come with her. While everyone dispersed, Brian walked in front of Lucy and asked, "Can you come outside?" Charlotte and Lena noticed it but didn't say anything. Lucy nodded her head and followed him outside. After they walked out, Brian spoke, "I guess this is the second time we have officially met." Lucy didn't say anything and nodded her head. "I have already proposed to Charlotte." Brian continued. This time Lucy didn't move and clenched her fist. There are many things that I still don't understand. But, after getting my memories back, I found that you didn't come to me because of prophecy or something. I don't know what to say since now, I am engaged to someone else. And, that person might not accept you. As the mother of my daughter, I have no problem with but. Brian turned and his face turned serious. If you want to live in this house in the future, you better listen to her. I will make one thing clear right now. I do not like you. The only reason I am even considering you to be someone related to me is because of Ely. Brian walked straight and passed by her. At this moment, Lucy turned around and tears fell down her cheeks. Why? Why do I have to bear all the pain? I was the one who fell in love with you 15 years ago. I was the one who bare your child. I am the one who had to stay away from you for 8 years. I am the princess, the only person worthy to be your bride. So, why? Why does she get to be your wife? Why not me? Slap. Suddenly, Charlotte appeared in front of her and slapped her cheek. That's the reason. You said it yourself. Leaving him alone for 8 years. Leaving him alone when he needed someone closer the most. Leaving him when he had no one to rely on. Prophecies. Destiny. Do you know why I hate you and Lena even though I don't reject the idea of him getting anyone he loves in his life? You came to him because of prophecies and destiny. You didn't come to him because you truly loved me. If you want to know why I get to be his wife. Because destiny supports someone who truly makes an effort. I stayed with him when he was at his worst. I supported him when he was alone. I was there with him and I am still with him. I did all that despite being a werewolf, despite knowing the fact that he hated us, despite knowing that he might even try to stab me as he did to you. I didn't shed tears and hide in my room. I gathered my courage, cooked him food, picked up extra jobs, and supported him while you were weeping in your high-class mansion. And, you still dare to say why.